Yeah, let's start the session. Thank you for joining us for the AI adoption for non-for-profits. So today we'll be presenting, I'll be presenting, my name is Raji, National Solutions Advisor for CBS. And we got Dan Dsouza, Head of Information Security at CBS. And we got Javiera Soto from Microsoft joining as well. So today we'll cover, first, Javi will cover the state of AI from Microsoft, a bit of insights from Microsoft and statistics and data and around AI. And then we'll talk about CBS and what we do for those of you who don't know us. And even if you do, some of the capabilities you may not be aware of. And then we'll go into what is an AI-powered organization, and what are all the components and what are the challenges and opportunities as well. So we will have 2 question sessions in here. So that's between number 3 and number 4. We'll have one break for question sessions. And when we get into the challenges and opportunities, that's where we'll look at real-world examples. And we also have a specific case study we want to discuss. And then we'll give you some recommendations around next steps to take, as well as some of the how to utilize your existing investments in your NFP, and then specific offers that we already have. Yes, so so a couple of housekeeping things. Your mic will be muted. So if you have any questions, please put it into the chat, and we will address them as many as possible during the session. And the session will be recorded, and you will be sent a link to view the recording. And as mentioned, please add any questions, and we'll have 2 question sessions during this webinar. So over to Javi.
Thank you so much, Raji. Hello, everyone. My name is Javiera or Javi. I am a partner sales executive across Microsoft Elevate Asia for security, and I'm delighted to be working alongside our partner today to talk about the state of AI. Next slide, please. And so what is this fancy term, Microsoft Elevate? So just to introduce this part of the organization, Microsoft Elevate brings into one organization our technology support, donations and sales for schools, community colleges, and non-profit organizations globally. We are committed to a future where AI supports economic growth and improves the lives of people, including school, at work, and in their personal lives. And we do this by bringing the power of AI to those communities mentioned, as the only way technology can enable changes is if actually people know how to use it. And that is why we will continue to invest in skilling for nonprofits and education, as well as the global workforce, as we all navigate through the AI economy. And we are incredibly proud that CBS has made a commitment to partner with us here in Australia and New Zealand. Next slide, please. So let's shift and focus on what's actually happening within the sector. So nonprofits aren't just talking about AI, they're actually already using it, and it's really making a difference. So for many organizations, AI is helping clarify their mission, amplify their impact, and it's not just about technology, it's about the data and insights to reach more people and serve communities better. And all the customers on the call know this all too well. So it's helping strategic planning to get a boost, and AI can obviously support spotting trends and helping teams make smarter decisions, whether it's about optimizing resources or predicting the outcomes of new programs. On the operational side, automation is obviously freeing up staff from repetitive tasks and actually focusing on the work that matters and connecting constituents, delivering services, and innovating. But security and privacy are still top of mind, and AI is helping nonprofit organizations protect sensitive data and maintain trust with donors, volunteers, and the communities and people that they serve. We know about fundraising, and it's another area where AI shines. It's about analysing donor behaviour and personalising outreach, and there's a stronger engagement and more sustainable growth. But the bottom line is AI is already driving transformation across nonprofits that embrace it and are seeing measurable results in efficiency, impact, and relationships. Next slide, please. So what I just want to draw your attention to, as I mentioned before, that security and privacy is in top of mind, is that beyond the challenges specific to nonprofits and social impact sectors, security threats are actually increasing worldwide. So according to the 2025 Microsoft Digital Defense Report, as you can see on the screen there, think tanks and nonprofit organizations became the fourth most targeted by nation-state threat actors. But it's not all doom and gloom. It's about just knowing that information and knowing what to do with it. Next slide, please. So we must ensure that our AI solutions are relevant to nonprofit organizations to support their most pressing needs. So as we all know, it starts with people. We alongside our partners aim to enrich staff experiences by empowering you as non-for-profit organizations, your workers and your volunteers to do more with less through intuitive AI-powered tools to reduce friction and amplify impact. And then obviously it's about mission, helping you nonprofit organizations deliver impactful programs by streamlining operations and modernizing how you engage with your volunteer and your people that you serve. And as you know, in this room, relationships are the core at nonprofit outreach. And we obviously want to help enable you to engage your supporters and funders more effectively, reaching people, deepening trust, and driving sustained support. And finally, it's about scale and sustainability. We support alongside our partners, transforming operations and evolving how you deliver your mission-critical work with agility, transparency, and measurable outcomes. And it wouldn't be Microsoft if we didn't say that obviously eligible nonprofits have access to grants and discounts across our Microsoft Cloud stack, including Microsoft 365, Copilot, Microsoft Azure, Dynamics, Copilot Studio, and more. And CBS is one of our partners that supports us to do that. And the final slide, please, Raji. This is just a bit of statistics in terms of what's happening to ensure that AI solutions are relevant across organizations like yourself to support the most pressing needs. So when we actually look at this sector, we're talking about a population of over 10 million nonprofits around the world. And among these nonprofits, 74% believe technology is essential, but yet only 36% of those are actually satisfied with the existing technology. And because nonprofits are facing funding shortages, they know and will have to find more efficient ways to drive greater impact. So I'm excited to say that part of obviously this talk is about supporting obviously CBS as a partner to help you actually make those transformations. Thank you. Over to you, Raji.
Thanks, Javi. Thank you for that insight. I think it's great to see, the investment that Microsoft making as part of to support not-for-profits, and please talk to us about how you can leverage that investment. So let's talk about a little bit about CBS. Those of you don't know us, we have end-to-end capability around cloud applications, security, data, and AI, and also business processes. So not just the cameras and the printers, but there's a end-to-end IT service capability, and we've been growing a lot in the last 5 to 6 years. Specifically around the Microsoft capability, probably you didn't know that we are one of the top 1% of Microsoft solution partners who have these 6 Microsoft solution designations. And in the security practice, we have specialized designations as well. What that means is holistically, we can bring you solutions that with expertise in not just one area, but multiple areas. Okay, and we service a number of lots of customers in the industry, lots of not-for-profits as well. So happy to talk about any specific use cases, but we will be also covering one use case here as well. Okay. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about from a high-level vision from an AI-powered organization. There's a lot of noise out there, and what are the feedback I get from customers, executives, leaders, and people who want to learn AI or want to embrace AI or already working on is the the noise and the messaging and confusion around that as well. So where do you start? To have an AI powered organization, what we are promoting is a human-centered approach. It's basically an augmentation approach. So humans and AI and automation combined to deliver high performance, superior customer service and other added benefits. And I've seen that this combination, this strategy works really well when you want to deploy and also having solutions that people are going to use. And it's really important. We'll touch on a little bit more on practically what that means. Now we're getting into anatomy of an AI-powered organization. So we put a framework together around what you need to look for or what you need to build or where the areas you need to focus on. Now, typically what happens is, we are focusing on tools and systems. What large language model do you use? Do we need to roll out an agent? What system or can we use or Copilot? What do we need to buy? All of the licensing. So we're focusing on the tools and systems, but there are other 6 areas. Obviously, you need an AI strategy. The key other things that we forget is the policies and standards. And there are some stats around how NFPs are looking at policies and standards. So we need to have that established, and things change very rapidly. So you need to be able to evolve with change. And you forget about the literacy and training, because just because you roll out, Copilot or anything like a chat function, you need training for staff to use it safely and get the best out of it. But one of the biggest things I've seen that people forget is the organizational change management, and it ties into the human-centered approach. If you don't get people involved, you have a plan across your organization to roll it out and get people, business, everyone part of it, it's not going to be successful. And I've seen a lot of programs fail because that is one of the areas that hasn't been addressed. So if you look at, and then of course, responsible AI practices, I'm not saying this is very, not relevant for everyone else, but this is particularly very relevant. Inclusiveness and fairness, especially transparency, they're very relevant attributes in a practice if you're deploying AI. So responsible AI practices are important, and it's important to select tools and systems that actually is the foundation built in. Okay. So I'm going to hand over to Dan to talk about the next couple of slides, why AI and security matters.
Thank you, Raji. Hi, everyone. So Raji is going to talk a lot about AI, the technology behind, what goes into the actual implementation of the technology. But there's a bigger picture, I guess, in play as well. Something that Javi talked about earlier, especially in the not-for-profit sector, where there are certain challenges. It's a very unique sector with its own unique challenges, and one of which is just cybersecurity adoption and the maturity of cybersecurity controls in not-for-profits, which, due to various other reasons, may not be potentially where they could be, or if you compare it to big tech and big enterprise, they may struggle a little bit in that area, and especially when you're adopting a new technology like artificial intelligence, and you're building out agents, you're deploying LLMs, things like that. So there's a whole technology aspect, but behind that, the question about how do you actually manage security in your organization needs to be looked at as well. You'll see some interesting stats throughout this presentation. 19% of organizations report cybersecurity breach in the last year, with highest incident rates in social services. So it's a sector of business that does get impacted quite a bit. AI adoption remains in its early stages, less than 10% using AI regularly, but directors do see the potential of AI to improve productivity. But while we improve productivity, we also want to make sure that the organization and the brand is protected as well.
Thanks, Dan. Looking at a number of reports that around the financial sustainability around NFP, and this is obviously front and center in our conversations, the number of NFPs, and these are the specific stats that we can talk about. And there is concerns around financial sustainability, And also, how do you not just short-term financial system, accuracy, but also future, how can you have long-term sustainability and as well. So there are a lot of challenges associated with that. And then that means that there's cost pressures, there's lots of other challenges that you need to address. And we recognize that. Next, we're going to cover a few things around common misconceptions and risks associated with that, where Dan can go into a little bit more on the security side of things. But I will start with just a high level. And I actually been presenting this slide for the last year and a half. And every time I present it, there's an interesting discussion. So and I have to keep reminding ourselves and everyone around it, is that generative AI, or generally AI, is a mathematical model, right? And it's not always accurate. And I think the key thing that we forget, it needs human oversight. And it can hallucinate, it can make things up. So I think this is an important thing when you're deciding to deploy or embrace AI. These 4 things are really important to keep in mind, that this is the boundaries we are working in. Again, I'll hand over to Dan to talk a little bit more on the security aspects of AI.
Yep, thank you, Raji. So, like I was mentioning earlier, you can't look at AI and the technology behind it in isolation. You've actually got to look at the security controls that are deployed across your organization. So you'll notice some more stats for you over here, that shadow IT is going to reach 75% of employees in 2027. Think of AI and AI agents that you deploy as an extension of your existing staff. Your staff are going to be using AI quite frequently in the organization. It's going to expand its use even more. And so the risk associated with shadow IT that was already in place just gets amplified. So a lot of the risk that you would have with insider risk as well, with employees sometimes doing things they maybe potentially should not do, or maybe doing things that they may not know is what's right, what's wrong, what's allowed, what's not. And then they're using AI to kind of continue their work and do further try to do what they're doing as part of the daily job. And that further amplifies some of those risks as well. So something that I guess to keep in mind is, especially for Australian charities, you can see 48% growth of cyber risk based on some of these stats recently, yet only 22% of not-for-profits have a formal AI policy. So that's an area of focus for us. And if you don't mind going to the next slide, please, Raji. You'll see there's a lot of stats and there's a lot of information about risks around AI. And the question that potentially arises is, where do you actually start? Like, what's the starting point? How do you start to get a handle on some of this risk? And how do you start putting in security controls? So a good starting point would be initially to understand the role that AI plays in the business. Like, what's the business strategy? What's the mission of the business? And where does AI and the use of AI actually fit in that? You need to assess then the maturity of your environment. Do you actually have the tools and the capability to deploy AI solutions across the business? Have you identified the threats that come with this? Have you done any form of threat modeling? And have you evaluated the effectiveness of your controls? So if you do see threats coming in, what controls do you have in place? And then do you have a formal way of measuring the risk that comes with that? And even to put these 4 things in place, you're going to need some kind of guidance, and you're going to need a governance structure of some form. So what we recommend, the very first step on this security and risk journey for AI is to establish an AI governance process internally. And even with an AI governance process, where do you actually start with establishing an AI governance process? It's not as simple as just looking up a template for an AI policy and deploying that and saying that you're ready to go. There are a few different things that you have to consider. Firstly, what's the reference base that you're using? There's various references out there. You can use the NIST AI RMF. You can use ISO 42001. It's a standard. So are you going to choose a framework? Are you going to choose a standard? What actually applies to your business? There's a lot of thinking that goes behind that. So we also understand that not-for-profits may not have all the funding and the resources at their availability to actually go in and start implementing these programs of work. And I guess that's where we help a lot of our customers as well, just to get started on that journey. You can't really necessarily, implement all the security controls in one big bang, but you got to start somewhere. So start with understanding what framework you're going to adhere to, and then based on that, create some documentation internally. That could be as simple as an AI acceptable use policy. You could start there, and then create AI standards, procedures, and other documentation behind that. A risk register is really handy as well, just standard IT security hygiene. And a key aspect is to assign some roles and responsibilities within the organization. So who are your champions for AI security and risk? Identify those, implement those into the policy as well. There are specific AI-related considerations as well. So Raji touched on transparency earlier as well. There's ethics, there's bias, especially in the NFP sector. A lot of these are quite important. And so you need to consider these when you're actually building in your policies as well. And lastly, just understanding the AI lifecycle and managing risks across that entire lifecycle. That could come through in the form of risk register, but you will also need those champions coming in and helping you along the way, doing that evaluation of risk throughout that AI adoption lifecycle. This is very high level, of course, but we're happy to jump into a more detailed deep dive on a separate session with you as well. I'll hand back to Raji, I believe, at this point.
Yeah, thank you. So what we're going to do, so we're going to open up for there's a couple of questions in chat. We'll try to get to them. So the next section is where we go into some of those things we talked about. So some of the challenges around shadow AI and the policy stuff. There's a couple of questions coming up as well. And then some of the new things you can do as well. So and then we'll talk about some examples and some basic, foundational things you can do. So I'll just go into the questions here. So the first one is actually from Cyril. There's a long question, but I'll read it out to you. Our NFPs use M365. One of our suppliers' end-user license agreement for image stock specifically prohibits any AI or machine learning use of their licensing content, including uploading images to tools such as Microsoft Copilot and other Gen AI platforms. From practical and technical perspective, what controls would you suggest to prevent supplier license assets from being inadvertently ingested, indexed, and processed by AI systems? There's a long question, but basically what it's saying is, it says your content you're using, there's a restriction around using that in AI tools, and how do you address that? So there's two parts to this. One of the things that we do is, especially around Microsoft Copilot, Microsoft environment, we'll talk a little bit more on that. We do a security assessment around the controls that you can put in. So basically out of the platform and the environment, there are certain controls settings and controls that you can adjust to prevent certain aspects of it. And in some cases, it's not good enough, or it doesn't have the settings or not yet available to restrict certain aspects, especially in this scenario. And this is where the education and training comes in. It's a combination plus your policies. So you're enforced by policies, you have standards, you have education and literacy within your organization, plus you restrict from environment and tools. It's not just one thing about restricting, and because there's always going to be a way to solve that problem, but it's about like a multi-pronged approach. The other option is to have your own internal like a chat model that can help with all those controls. But again, you still need the policies, you'll need the training and literacy. There's another question that came in. Do you have any example of an AI acceptable use policy you can share? What we'll talk about is there's an AI policy review that we can do, or if you some advisory, we can probably take that offline, but we can definitely help you with an advanced teams specializes in that. And whether you have an AI policy already, or you're looking to build one, we can help you with that. And then there's a piece of work that associated with that. So we are reluctant to share anything generic at the moment from an AI policy point of view, but because it has to be catered to what you need. So we'll definitely have some way of addressing that challenge as well. Okay, cool. So there's two people have said that that's really useful. So we'll definitely have something for that later on. So let's move on to the next section where we dive a little bit deeper into challenges and opportunities. So Now, we talked about the shadow AI challenge that we have, risk of using public LLMs, and there's lots of stats associated with that as well. But there is risk of your employees knowingly and unknowingly cutting and pasting stuff into public LLMs. So there are lots of examples for that. And what are you going to do around that? That's just one example, but there's other ways. There are tools that come with AI built in. How do you know? I mean, a classic example is the note takers that come in as well. Where does the data go? Where does the data live? Right? Conversations are recorded. And then the impact and fear of AI, which is really important. We need to address that, and also risk of AI mistakes. So we'll go into a little bit more on that, and then we'll talk about specific use cases that around specific opportunities and specific types of agents that you can build in NFPs. Okay, the first challenge. I guess the main one is to reduce the risk of your organization, your user cutting and pasting stuff into public LLMs. I'll hand over to Dan to talk about the work we do around deploying your corporate chat and the policies and everything, which is also relevant to one of the questions.
Yeah, thank you, Raji. So like I was mentioning earlier, before you actually start jumping in and deploying technology and starting up projects and starting to deploy agents across your environment, the first thing you need to have is that governance structure behind that. You need to understand what you intend on doing, how does that align to your business goals and objectives as well, and then the environment that it sits within. So the AI agents or any technology that you deploy doesn't sit in isolation. It sits within, let's say, for example, your M365 tenant. And so you need to understand what security controls you already have in place currently in there. So do you have things like multi-factor authentication in place? Do you have data loss prevention configurations in place? How have you actually set up all of that tooling in the background before you even start deploying AI agents or start using this technology in any form? And so that's one of the things we also help our customers with. We have a Microsoft 365 security assessment that we do initially. It gives them a very good lay of the land as to what's the current state and where potential gaps are. And that's something, I guess, it's a lot of good information for you to go in before you start deploying. So we talk about governance. We talk about having a sound environment with sound controls before you actually start deploying AI technology in there. And the last one I would like to really focus on is, training your people. Your people are your front line. You're the first line of defense. I guess getting that training across your staff, getting them to understand the risks of using AI. How do you actually use this technology safely and securely? How does it actually align to your internal policies and your governance structure? It's quite important for them to get on the same page, because you'll find that a lot of risk is reduced as a result of that. Just using the technology securely, even if there are, let's say, potential gaps. Let's say you've already deployed something insecurely across your organization. There's gaps in there. You probably know about it. It's in your risk register. But if your staff are trained to implement or use that technology safely, you reduce some of that risk. So focus on the training of your internal employees as well. So that's that's potential ways of reducing the risk in the organization. And then, of course, select your tools carefully as to what tools you're going to use. Something like Copilot would be deployed within your tenancy. It would inherit all of your existing security controls. There's data residency considerations in there. There's data protection considerations in there. There's a lot of controls that Microsoft put in place as well with Copilot. So there's a lot to leverage, and happy to go into that in some more detail in another session if you're keen. But that's all I had on that slide, Raji. If you was there anything else you wanted me to touch on, or happy to move
That's
on
pretty
to
much. I'll touch on the Copilot chat component. So added to what Dan was saying, so most organizations already have E3 or E5 licenses or very specific other license SKUs as well. They already have Copilot chat as part of it. This is the Copilot chat. This is not the paid version of Copilot, right? And what it is it gives you a corporate version of ChatGPT or Gemini, and it comes with Microsoft Enterprise Data Protection, so which means that it's secured in your tenancy. That data is private. There's policies associated with that, and they are protected against copyright and other aspects of it. So I know there was a copyright question as well. So there is, so that means it's a really good way to get your staff using corporate version of like a large language model. And the other thing it's important is there's a question around agents, which I'll touch on it. If you want to roll out more sophisticated AI solutions, that even AI solutions that requires human oversight and anything like that, your staff need to know how to use AI in a corporate context, how to use chat, how to use prompting. So what we have a program will help you to work out what settings and what how you want to configure Copilot chat. And then, as Dan mentioned, there's a free assessment around the Microsoft M365 environment. So I think that is in itself, a number of our customers are rolling out if you haven't already rolled out. So what that means, it reduces the shadow AI risk, because you're giving them an option and you're putting the right guardrails in, and you're getting your staff ready for future AI transformation pieces. Okay. The next one I'm going to talk about a little bit is impact and fear of AI. Now, this is a tough one to discuss, but there are ways to handle that as well. So as we mentioned, human-centered AI is one of the main approaches that we take. What I have seen is that there's an interesting statistic around 31% of employees sabotage your Gen AI strategy. So I have also seen this in firsthand. So if you want AI projects to be successful, you have to get your subject matter experts, the people who are impacted, part of that initial discovery very early on in the stage. So messaging, humans augmentation, not replacement, have your policies, training and education, and include them, identify early what their pains and gains are and address that. And, another good tool, a lot of organizations have built an ideas portal where anyone can put how the AI can help them, or any automation or anything can help them. So get them part of that journey, and that makes a huge difference for the success of projects. I have seen projects that are rolled out, hasn't adopted because, and then it's been also backlash against that. So I think it's really important to set that message from upfront. Okay. The next challenge we're going to talk about is AI risk. So the main important thing is it's not one solution for everything, right? It's not like we give everything to an AI solution and that's it. When you are rolling out AI solutions, one of the most important things to understand is that it can make things up, which is called hallucination. So you need to have what's called human in the loop, or HIL, human in the middle. You need to have staff who can review the output or part of that decision-making process, so you can validate and verify. Ensure accuracy and put the right controls and oversights. It also gives them an opportunity to learn about how AI behaves. Now, if you learn how it behaves, then you can actually work with them, make it useful. Okay, keep going. All right. So I've seen similar diagrams before, is where human in the loop is working this way. So basically what it is that AI will make a decision or create content or do something. And if it's highly accurate up to a certain percentage, that could go into a system, and then you have human review process if it's not. But even if it's highly accurate, how do you know that? So one of the things I crossed it out is that in the very early stages, you want to have human in the loop from pretty much every single thing you do until you're comfortable with that. And in certain scenarios, you would not have that end-to-end fully automated. And that's the reality of it. So tip is that customers come in and say, we want to build a chatbot or an AI assistant to get our customers to come into our website and get some information. What I suggest is deploy something like that internally first. Learn from it and get your staff who are subject matter expert to use it. And have a human review process and tools to review it. As part of the process, provide citations. So because AI, if you're using AI that's connected to a knowledge base, it will give an answer back. But do you have the links to the source? So you need to validate the source. And train users on prompting and human in the middle review and fact checking. And the key thing is select the right use cases. AI can't solve every problem. It doesn't is suited for most things. And then important thing is selecting the right use case. And we could have a separate session just on that piece alone. So now I'm going into a little bit more on examples. So a very simple example. Now you could do it as part of, if you want to do Copilot chat, which is, you get an email, you can draft a response using chat, and then you can do that. You can actually review it and then send it to the customer. Or if you have the paid version, which can do it in Outlook automatically. But even within systems, imagine that you have in your service ticketing platform or an email comes in, you can automatically draft that email, something simple, and that could save you a lot of time. But the key thing is there's somebody reviewing it and authorizing, and I'll talk about a specific example associated with that. Okay, let's go into opportunities a little bit more. Now, I'll put together some examples of that we are working with customers on, and some around, things like I've seen some use case around fundraising agents. If you want to, so for example, a question you want to ask is create a personalized end of financial year appeal for donors who are who gave more than $500 last year, but haven't donated in the last 6 months. So that's a kind of a scenario that you can explore using a fundraising agent, work on different campaigns. Volunteer agent could be, if you're doing volunteer services, figure out who's available, who things like that, but you need to have the data available for that. Caseworker, so providing support for caseworkers. So this is internal again, giving them support. Okay, can we find out information around what documents they need? Grant response, so writing grants, which is an interesting one as well, which is, even within our organization, we write a lot of proposals. We actually respond to a lot of RFPs and RFQs, and we have a grant writing agent that can grab all the information from all the things we've done, RFP writing agent that can actually develop that 50% of the draft, then or 70% of the draft, then humans can, we can review, we can add content to it. So important thing is, again, iterating. When you're starting off, make sure it's internal first. Knowledge retrieval and search, getting information to your staff is probably a really good place to start. Make sure human in the loop, can be fact-checked, and support internal staff. Okay. We're going to go through a couple of scenarios. So this is using technology that you already have. Obviously, there's some additional licensing associated with this, but we can talk about that. But some of these licenses are like $300 a month from a consumption bucket, right? So that's just Copilot Studio license. So a simple agent could be, you could publish into Teams that connects to a SharePoint library or a knowledge source. Now we've deployed a number of these scenarios, and this is a very simple agent that you can build very specific to a very specific function. Could be supporting a certain type of area. You can upload all your documents or point it to a knowledge base that you already have or knowledge repository. The other one we are working with the customer on is when they have a portal that has an old school chatbot, which is basically the way I say old school is it does not connect to generative AI. It's a question and answer, but then it sends a question to this organization and it gets into the CRM, and somebody has to sit there and figure out where it needs to go. So which category and how to respond to that. So we're building that based on using the existing data sources. If there's a customer that you already know about, classifying different types of requests that are coming in. So that's another one you can use. The next one is what's called omni-channel, which is that you got a lot of these channels actually, engaging with you. So maybe you may not have a chatbot, or that's okay. You may have an email. Obviously, you have emails, forms being emailed or sent via mail. You have phone calls, in person. Coming into your offices, or this customer had an app. Imagine all that data coming to a router or such, which is AI driven. It can enter that information into the CRM effectively, and then also classify and route to the right business unit, right, who can help them. And even then the next level is even create the draft responses to that. Another example is, I think this is another thing that you can have a look at, and also for your staff, is that provide an assistant for your staff connecting to your knowledge sources, your CRM or any knowledge sources you have, and they could have common questions that they get. You can categorize that and provide that information. Okay. So I'm going to talk a little. Okay, one last thing is I touched on the automated email response. So, for example, if you have Dynamics 365, and that's, I think, the customer service module, which I'm not really 100% sure, but I can confirm that. But it has the customer service agents out of the box. So you can enable those agents. And what it can do is it can, when an inquiry comes in, automatically draft the email based on the customer records, past queries that happen in. And it also has capability to create those knowledge-based articles and human review, but it's got a human review process already built in. But if you don't have Dynamics, if you don't want to spend on the extra licensing, there are other ways to build your own capability to review that, or use, Copilot chat out of band to do that. So which means you still need to cut and paste, but that is one of the solutions that you can deploy. It's quite beneficial. I'm going to talk a little bit more about a use case, NFP use case. This is kind of type of a journey that they've started. Now, the journey of your journey could be different, but one of the challenges with Flourish had was in 2024 when they came to us is they had data everywhere. They had, and a lot of that information around their programs they do, they had to get that information all manually put through spreadsheets and documentation. So what we did was we had a number of workshops with them, and as part of that workshop, we used that human-centered approach. We got all the stakeholders, people on the front line, people who are working on this, involved in that number of sessions to understand their requirements, what are the things they're going through, and we built a reporting analytics platform. Now, for that one, we actually identified different personas. So from a frontline worker to the senior management, how they view the data. It's not just one dashboard for everything. Now, why are we talking about this in AI? This is the foundation for them to build AI agents and on top of it. So the data piece, there's obviously, this could be another topic, but this data piece is really important. And now they have data that they can trust on, clean, up-to-date, concise, what they call golden records. Their reporting is self-service, near real time. They get, instead of weeks, within a day, they get the up-to-date information, but they have an ecosystem to build agents and other things for them as well. So that's a key aspect as well. Okay, keep going. We got a couple more slides to go, and then we'll go into questions. So next step. So now I think we covered a lot of these things now, and around policies, an approach could be to build and deploy your own chat. There's risks associated with that. I went through a number of use cases. Where to next? We do have a session called free AI accelerator session. So this is mainly aimed at your senior executive leadership. So we do 1.5 hour session. We talk about the foundational aspects of it. We showcase some capabilities, and we look at how we can accelerate your journey, understand where you are, and governance piece. That's one. That's an executive leadership one. It's a free session where we do. As part of this webinar, we are offering Ask Me Anything session. It's a half-day session where you get myself and members from Dan's team and other security professionals to talk about getting some practical advice, whether it's on policies, whether it's on AI strategy, half day with us. And we can, for the people who are participating in that webinar, we can offer that to you as well. Okay. And for the sign up, and the next one, I'll hand over to Dan. Do you want to talk a little bit about the security assessment as well?
Yeah, thank you, Raji. Coming back to my original point of ensuring that your M365 subscription tenancy itself is set up with the right security controls before you start deploying any AI agents or anything else, we do offer a free security assessment of your Microsoft 365 tenancy. So it's not Microsoft Secure Score. It's not an assessment using any Microsoft tool itself. It's an independent assessment that we do based on CISA's Secure Cloud Business Application Framework, the SCUBA framework. And then at the end of that, you get a good size report. It's 30 or 40 pages on average. And it talks about all of the different controls, the way you've configured it, and against that framework, where the gaps are and what you can do potentially to remediate those gaps. And if you need help remediating, we've got a team of consultants. We've got a security operations center as well that does monitoring. So we've got a lot of capability in-house to help you on that journey of remediation. But the starting point is actually understanding where you stand right currently at this day and age. So that's what this assessment covers. Thank you, Raji.
Excellent. So what we'll do is we'll go into questions now. I'm just going to go into the next slide. We got 2 QR codes for Australia and New Zealand. And there was a question on when is AI accelerated session. So this is not a session that we do public. It's per organization. This is for your organization. So we can either do it in, most of the sessions are in person. So we can either do an in-person hour-and-a-half session with yourselves or online. I've done a couple online, majority as well. So if you want to sign up for them or get in touch with them, please use these QR codes for that. So that's that question there. I'm just going to go through the questions around that we've given. The Institute of Community Directors has an excellent one, and their policy. So this is talking about the policies. Could you clarify whether it's worthwhile to create agents given the added complexity? Specifically, how does the value for money and required effort compared between building agents and simply using Copilot in its standard form? Excellent question. So I'll post a link in there. We wrote an article around why AI projects fail, and we talk about the total cost of ownership and ROI, and that's really important. So to answer that question, what I suggest is, and this is why we are promoting for you to deploy Copilot Chat, because that will give you immediate benefit of using an LLM in organizations. We get your staff ready to use AI and also get used to using AI. And that is a really good thing. If that could give you a lot of value straight out of the box, you already have the licensing and we can do a free assessment for you. And if you want to do the implementation, there's a very small piece of engagement you can do with us. We'll set up the environment properly and help you roll that out. Around whether it's worthwhile creating agents, it comes down to use cases. So in that AI accelerator session and in an Ask Me Anything session, we can work on specific we can help you identify use cases that are going to give you the best return on investment, and then really identify what kind of an impact it can have from a financial as well as other type of it. So it's really important to understand that. Depending on what stat you use, 90% of AI projects fail because they don't pick the right use case, and a number of other aspects as well. But picking the right use cases that gives you ROI is really important. I'll give you an example. One of our customers had hundreds and thousands of emails coming in, and they had to manually, it all comes to the CRM, and somebody sits there and goes and classifies something. I touched on that in a use case, classifies them into different departments. They had 20% of these, and the users can classify as well. They can pick a category, and 20% of those were incorrectly classified. Now, one of the things we're looking at is building a classification algorithm. Now, even if that algorithm is 50% accurate, which means that they will save at least 40, 50 hours, probably like a FTE, one person's time per week, right? 40, 50 hours a week, just by having one. Now, if you transport that into, employee costs, it's not about replacing an employee. They have a small, think about 5 staff looking at it, they're overwhelmed. And sometimes they're backlogged to months to respond to these requests, right? So that's a perfect scenario where you can think about, you can get the ROI calculated really easily. Look at also high volume tasks that are, if you can make a small impact, and that could have a big return on investment as well. Great question. So that's that question. And in the past, we implemented solutions. Okay, so in the past, we've implemented solutions with support models, knowledge sharing, and strategies like train the trainer programs and FAQ. This is not the case anymore for AI. What would be good support model for AI? Again, a great question. What I suggest, one of the things I've worked on in the past, and I've seen some universities and organizations and do, is social learning, right? And we do it internally as well. So have the formal policies and everything, have the formal training, but set up a Teams channel where you can share your chats, have regular catch-ups or meetups, or once a month you talk about what you've done really well, or have continuous learning and social learning and specific programs for your staff. and in lunch and learns kind of thing. And we do have them in CBS as well. And we're going to do one pretty soon, Dan and I as well. So it's about creating that social learning. And the other thing about it is it's really difficult to pick which course, because courses are outdated. They get outdated pretty quickly. Social learning is good because people can bring in what they have seen. And, because there's so much stuff going on, I mean, I've given up keeping up with anything, and it's a reality. And I learned from others. I learned from yourselves and through, socials and my peer network and working with customers. And I think it's important that you create that social learning ecosystem within your organization. Great question. Presentation, I talked about that. Based on my experience, both simple and complex agent encounter fundamental limitations. For instance, the access I have isn't easily transferred to agents, or an agent might not be able to create a Word document, even though it usually can. Issues like permissions, access, and complexity have often kept me stuck with agent worlds. Would love to receive feedback from other experience. Again, another great question. So what's happening is that even through Microsoft Entra ID and everything, there's an agent will have its own identity, own permissioning structure, right? So in the past, what we used to do is we used to create what's called a service account that has permissions to run certain jobs or certain things. And then we were creating that for agents as well. But what's happening is that, even Microsoft is doing that. Agents will have their own user account and own permissioning structure, just like another employee. And then you can set specific role-based access to those agents, what they can do and what they can't do, just like a person would. And that's how you can control, and then you can see the audit trail and how things are done. Okay, so that's a good question. And this space is evolving, but that's where we're heading, that agent having the digital identity, just like your own staff member. Okay, does the security assessment help assist with this, with assessing permissions, access to who has? An example is we are currently building an agent that is meant to pass data from interacting with the user to a planner. I'm now finding out that there might be access level issues, which is finding it after the solution has been after the solution has been implemented. Great question. So I'll keep before I hand over to Dan around the security assessment piece, I'll touch on the other piece around just general access, right? There's two things. It's really important to understand who has access to what, especially if you're using things like Copilot, the paid version, because the way you set up your permissioning structure it impacts it. For example, imagine you have an agent that you've given access to a SharePoint site, and you don't have access to certain parts of that SharePoint site. And if the agent's only going to use your rights context to give you answers, so it's going to miss out a certain aspect of it, and the answers could be different or not complete or wrong. So that's really important. And now the question you're asking is, can the security assessment detect that? I'll hand over to Dan. Do you want to take that one, Dan?
Yeah, thanks, Raji. The security assessment is mainly looking at your broader tenancy level control. So it's not going into specifics of, if you've over-provisioned access for certain APIs, or, if you're looking at specific applications. It's definitely something we can help you with, and I'm more than happy to have a chat in either one of the sessions or just individually as well, just to understand a little more about, how that access has been provisioned, what's the spread of technology, how many applications are you interacting with, and all of that. But the security assessment is a very, I guess, rigid in terms of it's looking at the SCUBA framework, and it's looking at your tenancy. So it's looking at all the controls around the technology that's within your tenancy. So look at things like privileged access, like how many privileged are you, like, do you have too many privileged access accounts, how many, and what's recommended that you should have, what level of access do they have, but may not go into the granular aspects of inter-application access control.
Just tagging on to that. So if the specific things you need around, okay, now you deployed an agent which has got a data source, and now you're having either challenges with access or people overshare it, there are tools that you can do access scans and access audits, and we can help you with that from a consulting kind of point of view. So maybe have that initial session around what your requirements are, or show us a problem, and we can either recommend some tools that are already out there out of the box, so you can pre-purchase, or we can do some access audits around your knowledge repositories. Okay, cool. I think that's all for questions. We do have questions. I think we already asked that. Thank you. But before we go off, we do have some prizes. Is that right? So we have drawn some lucky door prizes, so virtual door, I would say, and then we can put that in. There you go. So we'll contact you directly what that means. And then share that with you. So there was sorry, I'll ask one more question. I want to encourage AI usage by teams across our organization, but how do you recommend maintaining information security, keeping organization from private for minimum cost outlay? Great question, and that is a really good one for do a security assessment or ask us anything session. Then we can dive a little bit more into that one. So without significant cost outlay, because our initial consultation is free, and then the security assessment is also free, but we can recommend some low cost options if you want to deploy anything as well. Okay, so congratulations to Cyril, Adam, and Tina. And if you have any further questions, and then we got the QR code, and the session will be, the recording will be sent as well, and there'll be a questionnaire as well. So thank you so much for being part of the webinar. It's been a lot of fun talking to you, and some great questions we had to ask, and you asked, and then we responded, and then happy to continue the conversation with just a casual chat with us, or picking up any of those sessions that you asked me. Anything session's really good. I think it's highly it's valuable. We can bring in the right people for that as well. And thank you very much.